everyone, Lindsay Ford here, and today we are going to be discussing gut health. And this information today is really supposed to inspire transformation. So take everything that's provided in this little seminar and really think about what could you do differently, what could change, especially nutritionally, so that your GI health can actually improve. When I'm talking about gut health, there's really two main aspects that I'm really going to cover. First, I'm not spending as much time here, but your enteric nervous system. I may be a little biased, but your enteric nervous system, also known as your ENS, is also the part of your body that has so many different neurons and nerve cells that line that GI tract, which then influences our mood, our just GI health in general, as far as upset stomach, bloating, gas, nausea, all of those things. We have more neurons actually in this ENS than we do in our peripheral nervous system, as well as the neurons that line your spinal cord. So this absolutely matters. Some of the things that Skyterra offers that I think is so valuable are things like yoga classes, the breathing, the meditation, because it actually helps calm down that ENS. So if anyone out there experiences just different types of moods throughout their day, feeling like certain things impact their GI health, like stress, a really hard day at work, and you just feel like, oh man, my stomach's just not feeling 100%, or you feel like you have a lot of food sensitivities, or things just don't sit well with you, some of the things that you can do, your breath work, your meditation, your yoga, can help so much improve that GI. A big part of this is your vagus nerve. It really goes throughout your entire body and helps calm the GI down. I'm really not going to spend too much time there, but just know that this is huge in regards to just your overall gut health. The second area that I really want to target is your microbiome. And this is the area where I could geek out on for a really long time, but you don't want me to do that. Your microbiome is really the subset of microorganisms, yeast, fungi, bacteria, that's housed in your large intestine. It's a very symbiotic relationship with our body. So we need this microbiome to survive, and it needs us to survive. It's actually equivalent to about 2 to 5 pounds of your body weight. So when you step on the scale, just think you have 2 to 5 pounds worth of bacteria and just microorganisms living within you and on you. This bacteria, this microbiome, is also referenced as the second brain. And that's, to me, pretty alarming, pretty shocking, actually, that we've got this first brain and then we have this second brain that is very much in control of just our overall health, our overall well-being. It will dictate how we feel. It dictates how we utilize food for either energy, or do we store it? How do we actually take what we're consuming and then kind of spread it out throughout our body for it to do some of the big functions that we need food to do? The other thing that this microbiome does is it actually controls your immune system. Your first line of defense is your skin. It's your largest organ. And then your second line of defense is this microbiome. So this stuff is really, really important. And how we think about keeping this microbiome really flourished and healthy is a lot through what we consume and what we do day to day with our nutritional patterns. I want to kind of break this down as if we were to think of this microbiome as a garden. So when we think of a garden, we think of diversity, we think of different species, healthy soil, healthy plants. The same thing is going to go for you and your body. Healthy soil, healthy microbiome, healthy body. And it's not going to be perfect. We have about 85% good flourishing bacteria, and about 15% of our bacteria is actually neutral or not so hot. So for example, we probably all have a little bit of E. coli. We probably all have a little bit of C. diff. I know that sounds kind of scary. However, it's if it actually flourishes, will it then become a huge problem? So we really want to focus on keeping that good bacteria as healthy and as flourished as possible. So if we take this garden kind of picture, think of weeding, seeding, and feeding. So those three big things are really important, and we're going to break that down. So first, when we weed a garden, we have to pull it out. It's things that kind of constantly grow. We got to yank them out. They can get kind of tedious. However, it's really important to make sure that those aren't overcrowding the garden, just like that bad bacteria doesn't overcrowd really your large intestine and then sneak up into your small intestine. The weeding aspects from a nutritional perspective. First, getting rid of that added sugar and alcohol. And I don't want to say completely, man, it's got to all go, but really watching how much of that you consume. Reason being is that the added sugars that we get from especially your processed foods, think Nutella, all right? I'm going to use this as an example. The first ingredient is sugar. It's not hazelnuts, nor is it chocolate. So it's that added sugar component that actually feeds the bad bacteria that's living within us. That's not really great. So we really want to make sure that we're monitoring how much added sugar we really are consuming. The second thing that we really want to watch from a weeding perspective are pseudo foods. So foods that our body doesn't really recognize. It's stuff when you look at the label, you probably don't really recognize it. I'd say the biggest culprit today, and there's a lot more research coming out about this, are your artificial sweeteners. Your artificial sweeteners are things like your Splendas, sucralose, your sugar alcohols. There's all different kinds, but I would start to get really familiar with what those are. And then looking at the label, looking at the ingredients list, and if you see anything with an artificial sweetener, just go ahead and put it back on the shelf. Your body doesn't recognize it. They can say that it has 0 calories. However, there's more research coming out that it's actually changing the flora within us. That's not what we want. So you're better off to actually consume real sugar, or what we prefer here at Skyterra, using things like your local honey or even 100% pure maple syrup, if we're talking specifically an added sugar. The last piece from a weeding side of things is to really think about how much are you over sanitizing yourself and just the things around you. We actually build up our immune system when we're really young, and the more exposure we get to different things, the better off we can actually fight things. So we don't really spend as much time outdoors. That's really good. Getting your hands a little dirty, actually working in a garden can be really helpful. Spending time outdoors is one of the best things that you can do, but we've got to make sure that we're not over sterilizing ourselves, so then we're not as we can't tolerate things quite as well. I'd say the last sneaky one from a weeding side of things would be certain medications. And I don't want to go down this pigeonhole of don't taking your meds. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But your antibiotics, for those that have been on antibiotic round after antibiotic round, you're actually killing off the good and the bad bacteria. There's now different antibiotics that are trying to kind of decipher, okay, which are the bad, which are the good, which is definitely moving forward. But if somebody's going to prescribe you an antibiotic, just make sure that you have a conversation and ask, hey, how is this actually going to influence my flora? Because I want to keep that as healthy as possible. So we've got the weeding. Now let's go into the feeding. So what do I actually need to consume to really keep this good bacteria flourishing? Number one, plant food. That is your biggest, I'd say, make this your biggest takeaway. Getting enough plant food is essential. Reason being is that fiber that we get from plants, the fiber that we don't digest that hits that large intestine, is actually the food for the healthy bacteria. So your non-starchy vegetables, your leafy greens are huge. Your cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower. Other examples, tomatoes, onions. I mean, the list goes on and on. Here's what I'll say, just if for anyone that's got more of inflammation going on in the gut, certain raw vegetables may actually be cause a little bit of irritation on that GI lining. However, getting that plant food and getting that fiber is absolutely critical. Other plant food examples, your beans, your lentils, your whole grains, your nuts, your seeds, your avocado, coconut, dark chocolate, they all have these fiber compounds that we don't break down really well whatsoever. It hits that large intestine and becomes the food for that healthy bacteria. That's important. We want to keep that flourishing. The next thing we can do from a feeding perspective is to really start consuming, just sprinkling in your fermented and cultured foods. Your fermented foods would be like your kimchi, your traditional sauerkraut, kombucha. They tend to be pretty acidic, pretty strong foods. It's taking something, and I'm gonna use just kimchi as an example. It's taking something like cabbage and you let it steep and you let it sit. And what ends up happening is you consume healthy bacteria in conjunction with the benefits of the cabbage. So for your GI, it's actually really, I'd say, I don't want to call it necessarily a superfood. However, it is very powerful in a good way to your gut. when you consume something like that, that is technically consuming a probiotic-rich food. So you're actually consuming that healthy bacteria. There's different strains that target different things. And so when you're thinking about, do I need to take a probiotic? What are these different probiotic-rich foods? Just know different strains will target certain things, constipation, diarrhea. There's now linkage to certain even moods, so like depression, anxiety, the list goes on. So just know from a probiotic perspective, different strains will target different things. So you may actually want to do a little bit of digging and figure out, okay, for me, what things will work better in my life? What would I like to see improve? Then your cultured foods would be things like yogurt. It's not necessarily fermented, it's not necessarily steeping and sitting, but it is something that definitely has those bacteria strains added to it, where then you get to consume that healthy bacteria. Another, I'd say, powerhouse would be kefir. It's kind of the best of both worlds, where you've got something cultured and fermented. So if you ever see that in the store, give it a try. It's pretty tart, so it works really well in smoothies. But if we kind of think, okay, how can I really take those two things, the plant food and the fermented / cultured foods, I would sprinkle it in. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, how can I really make sure I'm getting enough of all of those things? If you are somebody that is considering to take a probiotic, so actually taking the supplement of a probiotic, be really mindful not to overdo it and then overdo the probiotic-rich foods. You may not be feeling so hot. It could be something where you're like, whoa, okay, I gotta go to the bathroom. So just be aware that you don't wanna overshoot it either. The other thing from a feeding side would be making sure you're getting enough healthy fats. And your healthy fats, I'd say, definitely are more of that anti-inflammatory, healing type foods, that if there is any irritation, if there is any inflammation going on in that intestinal arena, then those kinds of foods will help kind of heal that area. Things like your fatty fish, your avocado, I'd say nuts and seeds can be helpful, but you've got to make sure that if there is any irritation, maybe your nut butters and your nut oils and your seed oils would be a better alternative. Those kinds of foods are very, very helpful, because what they end up doing is they produce what's called eicosanoids in the body. You don't really need to know that, but that really then trickles into the anti-inflammatory effect in your body. The other really big thing that fats do is they help with the absorption of those fat-soluble vitamins like your A, D, E, and K, which are pretty essential for keeping your cellular turnover as prime as possible. So weed, feed, and then we've got seeding. So seeding is kind of like this rebalancing act. And when it comes to what can you seed, this is more from a supplemental perspective. Not everyone needs to take this advice I'm about to give you. So just know, if any supplement you take, you probably want to talk to a trusted health professional that you work with on a daily basis. One would be a probiotic. With your probiotics, that's actually taking the supplement where you're consuming that bacteria. Now there's different types of probiotics that are very specific strains that target certain things. So if you wanted to take specifically, for example, like lactobacillus, blah, 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 then you could actually do that. Now with these probiotics, there's anywhere between, let's say, 5 million strains to up to 100 billion strains. And really, the more we can maybe think, the better. But really, it's a balancing act of making sure that you're not jumping the gun and doing too much. You may want to ease yourself into it versus going full throttle. I'd say 30 billion to 50 billion. 30 may be a good place to start, and maybe working up to that 50 billion. This is in conjunction with eating a very nutrient-dense, rich diet. It does not mean that just because you take a probiotic, everything is cured. The second thing you may want to consider taking would be a digestive enzyme, especially for those that are kind of lacking in the GI health department, where it's more symptomatic. And I'm talking upset stomach, you don't feel like foods digest completely well. Maybe you're a little bit more sensitive to certain things. And taking a digestive enzyme actually kind of primes your body to kind of pre-break down food. These would be taken before a meal, anywhere between 1 and 2 servings or capsules of whatever it is. For example, papaya enzyme is one that's a little bit more common, but there's different products out there, and this is more symptomatic thing. So if you feel like you kind of always have an upset stomach, this could be something to test. Again, talk to somebody about it before you just jump right in. The third thing that you may want to supplement with would be vitamin D. Vitamin D, especially D3, is the active form. Because the microbiome has so much function from an immune perspective, so does vitamin D. There's so much research coming out about vitamin D right now. It plays more of a hormonal role, so I would make sure that that is something that you really target, especially if you're living more in those northern states or if you're not getting a lot of sunlight. So too many people are vitamin D deficient, so that would be something I would look into. The last piece from I'd say more of a digestive health side would be taking a krill oil supplement. Krill oil is like a very potent omega-3, 1,500 to 1,600 milligrams a day. Your krill is a little bit closer to the algae. It's a little bit lower on the food chain. So I would look into that versus taking the fish oil. I will have to say, before you take any sort of fish oil, you've got to talk to your doctor about this. For anyone that's on certain heart meds, the last thing you want to do is take fish oil in conjunction with any sort of heart meds, mix the two together, and before you know it, you don't want to get a cut and excessively bleed. So just got to put that one out there. But when we're talking about just gut in general, I hope that you kind of understand that keeping that flora as flourished as possible is super critical. There's been so much connection with mood. There's been so much connection with even weight. There's so much connection with just how we feel, and what we consume day to day can make a huge impact on this. If there's one main takeaway, make sure you're getting enough plant food, feed that healthy flora, and just see how your body feels.